Austin Kleon's Share Your Work encourages us to share the things we care about in hopes of connecting with, learning from, and inspiring others. Our work, whatever it may be, doesn't have to be groundbreaking, extraordinary, or revolutionary, but it does have to come from us. For many, our work is our voice, so if you want to be heard, then you must be willing to share your work. One of the things I like about Share Your Work is that it encourages us to start as we are with what we know and what we have. We don't need to wait for a golden opportunity because there will likely never be one. Nor do we have to be an amazing person who does amazing things, because if there's something we've all noticed in life, it's that there's something for everyone. We're surrounded by ordinary people who share incredible things, and extraordinary people who share ordinary things, as well as all those in between. Whichever category we fall into, Kleon encourages us to let our thing, whatever it may be, to be something that others can connect with. Something else I like about this book is that it encourages us to reevaluate what it means for something to be ready. We may think our work isn't good enough to be seen by others, convince ourselves that we need more time, or that we should have done things differently. But all this does is encourage us to procrastinate. What's great about Kleon's book is that it promotes the sharing of our process, not just the finished product. Yes, people like to see the end result, but they also want to know what's happened behind the scenes to get to that point, both the good and the bad. So our work doesn't have to be in its final stages or good enough before we share it. It can be a complete mess with no clear direction, because there's something to be learned and taught at every stage of our process. Another thing that stood out to me is the notion that although we are all unique, we are also an amalgamation of our influences. We've taken pieces of the things that inspire us from different people and used that to shape the person we are today. If we can be inspired by others, then we should believe that others can be inspired by us. Doing so allows us to not only be appreciators, but to also be appreciated. The first thing I disliked about this book was the section on reading obituaries. Kleon describes this as near-death experiences for cowards. The aim is to remind the reader that death is inevitable and we should be inspired by those who did things with their lives to also do things with ours with the time we have left. Although I appreciate the intent of the message, I'd argue that reading obituaries isn't a great way to appreciate life more or feel inspired, as the focus shifts onto the lives of others and what they've done, instead of on our own growth and the journeys we've had. Looking externally for motivation may not be sustainable nor effective when these motivations are not personal to us. Something else I disliked about this book is the approach described in dealing with negativity. Nobody likes to receive negativity regarding their work, but in publicly showing our work, we must be prepared for both good and bad judgments. Kleon suggests that if people want to comment on your work, they can either contact you directly or copy your work over to their own spaces and talk about it all they want. Although there are those who make it their mission to be intentionally antagonistic, the fear of receiving a negative comment about our work robs us of hearing new ideas and suggestions from those we expose our work to, especially as not everyone will care to contact you directly. Blocking ourselves from the things we don't want to hear in case it offends us prevents us from engaging with those we share our work with and learning a new way of doing things. Just because we're proud of our work doesn't mean that it shouldn't be challenged. Lastly, I dislike the take on crediting the unknown. Kleon encourages us to give credit where credit is due, but states that we shouldn't share things we can't properly credit. Although I strongly agree that credit should always be given, sometimes we may come across something and we simply don't know where it's from or who made it. This doesn't mean that we should ignore it or keep it to ourselves, as in doing so, we're preventing others from being aware of something that could be useful to them. Just because we don't have the answer doesn't mean that something shouldn't be shared, as someone else will, and that person may very well be the creator themselves. Likes and dislikes aside, this book has a lot of inputs from different figures who have been used to corroborate the importance of sharing your work through their own experiences. Using different perspectives to build this book was an interesting approach, but as the author is Austin Kleon, I would have preferred to hear more of his opinions, as the external inputs were a bit heavy at times. Something else I wanted to note was the additional information provided at the end. Kleon shares a behind-the-scenes section which shows us his process in writing the book, including some of the things which didn't make the final edit. It's nice to see that in writing a book to encourage readers to show their work, the author did the exact same. Another thing I noticed is that throughout the book, the focus is on the process and not an end goal. Not everyone has a finished product to show, but everyone is in the middle of some sort of process. That means when the reader is advised to show their work, it's a call to anyone and everyone, no matter what stage you're at in your process. To conclude, Show Your Work encourages its readers to be part of a community of sharers and not hoarders. Through this book, we're urged to expose our work, not just for our benefit, but for the benefit of someone who may need exactly what we've been keeping to ourselves. Whether you've just started something new or you're finishing the last bits of a project, Kleon advises that there is no perfect stage at which to share your work, as every part of the process is vital and can be useful to someone. Furthermore, this book gives its readers the assurance that you don't have to be the most interesting person for someone to take an interest in you, but if you want to be noticed, you must be willing to show your work, which I think is a great message to share. Based on that, I would give this book a 3.5 out of 5. So would I recommend this book? Yes, I'd recommend this book to someone who has work to show but needs a bit of a push in doing so, as this book may be just that. I would also recommend this book to someone who may not consider themselves to be very interesting, as regardless of what you do or what you're into, there is no limit to what people appreciate. If you're interested in reading this review for yourself or seeing my favorite quotes, you can click the link provided in the description. And if you'd like to hear more of my book reviews or just watch me paint, feel free to subscribe. Thank you. Bye.